what do I mean by love? What is it sort of feeling? Is it smiles? Is it a high five? Is it a sense? No, it's very specific actions and a posture. But I believe that when that's the driving force, it actually yields better outcomes for the businesses financially. It yields better outcomes for the businesses operationally, strategically, in all the sort of key areas that businesses want to function and flourish.
What does it look like for love to be a KPI? Is that even possible? Let's talk about that today with Utibe Bassey.
Do you want to decommoditize your products and services? Do you want to become a destination brand, increase your revenue, and have more control over your pricing? Well, you're in the right place. Each week, we'll talk about how to create great customer experiences and how to orient your company to enable them. I'm your host, Devin Smith, and this is the Experience Leader Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Experience Leader and to Season 3. It has been quite a while, but I am super excited about the stuff that we have coming for you. Have some awesome guests, have some awesome topics coming up that are lined up, and really proud of the work that the team has been doing. I hope that you enjoy the content as much as we enjoy creating it. It is one of my favorite things to do, and I'm super glad to be back in front of the mic, bringing awesome luminaries in front of you in the field of business. All these different areas that we keep finding amazing people whose thoughts, insights, and stories that we feel compelled to share. So we'll get into that in just a moment. Another thing that has been going on, it's been about 5 months since I have put out a new episode, and in that 5 months, I actually launched my own consulting practice, and I'm excited, just having a blast at being able to focus 100% of my time on helping people create great customer experience, to change their companies, to align their business operations and their marketing and their products, to be able to really help people make progress on the things that they are trying to achieve. And, that is generally how we all measure whether something's a great customer experience. Did it help us make progress? And did we enjoy interacting with the company along the way? And it is something that I love doing every day. I feel super blessed to be able to do this. And if you want to check out everything that I have going on, also launched a new website. You can find that at devinwsmith.com. That's DEVINWsmith.com. Really excited to finally have this done. It has taken a couple of months of hard work to put together, but it's finally up and available for use. It is the new home of my blog, of the podcast, and you can also sign up for a newsletter. That's right. We're going to be doing a newsletter going forward, and you can subscribe to it at the website. So be sure to do that, because you'll be the first to know about all of the new content coming from Experience Leader. Also, just want to say here that if you haven't already, subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe in your favorite podcast player if you're listening to audio. We're from now on going to be having video with all of our episodes. Have a team helping me to produce that now, and really thankful for the great work that they're doing. And I think that you are really going to like being able to find this stuff, to see episodes that are related to one another. YouTube is just great at being able to suggest things that that are like what you're already listening to. So as the library of episodes builds, I hope that that will help you to be able to find other things that you're interested in from the show. And speaking of show, have an awesome show lined up for you today. We have Utibe Bassey. She is the head of customer experience at Dominion Energy up in Virginia. And she's also the creator of Love as a KPI. Love as a KPI is her ideology around business and centering your business on creating great outcomes for the customer. We're not talking woo-woo stuff here. We're talking about loving people through the action of providing great products and services and things that help them actually accomplish the goals that they have and the reasons for which they're buying your products and services. So without any further ado, here's Utibe Bassey. All right, folks, thanks so much for joining us. I am so glad to have Utibe Bassey here, who we lovingly call Utibe, here with us, the creator of Love as a KPI. Utibe, thanks so much for coming on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. I am very excited because we were able to connect over what you've created around Love as a KPI. I read your first piece on that, and I was just like, oh, she gets it. She absolutely gets it, and the way that you articulated it. It was just so great, and the name absolutely perfect. I'm a little jealous that I didn't come up with it myself. It's absolutely fantastic. Like, how did you come to wanting to create that?
Yeah, it's been a long time coming for me. I'll talk a little bit about sort of the why and the how. The name itself, funny enough, I was talking to one of my mentors about this idea, this concept, this thing that's been burning. And apparently I told him that it's kind of like making love a KPI, but I don't remember saying it. But when he played it back to me, he said love is a KPI. I was like, that's genius. And he said, no, you said it. I was like, no, you said it. And so apparently it came out spontaneously. But for a long time, even before I had language for it, I've always been someone that has been in the business world. I've had roles in various industries, in various functions, be it operations, strategy, marketing, technology. I've held many types of roles in a range of contexts. I love business. I went to business school. I love enterprise and commerce and all those things, but I've always had this just, I don't know, it feels like a little bit of a dichotomy with human outcomes in tandem with business. And so I never had language for it. I remember being in one of my jobs when I was much younger, Googling the term corporate hippie. I was like, is that it? Is that what I am? Like, why is it that I love business? Like, I love, again, markets and all those things, but I really want the outcomes to be better for people. So this has been a thing I would say I've been nurturing for well over a decade, if I'm honest with myself, probably closer to 20 years than anything. From the very beginning, I've always thought that business and should be good for people, but not in a general sense, but in genuinely like who people become as a result of their interactions with business. And so over the past year, that gnawing, right? This, sometimes you get in your gut, in your sense, like something, you need to say something, you have to bring your voice out. It's just gotten louder and louder. And so I had no choice but to listen. And so that's where Love as a KPI was born.
That's so cool. I like tell for the audience, explain what Love as a KPI is, and you all need to go subscribe after she's done telling you.
Thank you. It's an ideology, in its sense. I believe that when businesses are driven by love for people, meaning the main focus is loving people, and I describe, right, and part of me is working on this, is like, what do I mean by love? What is it sort of feeling? Is it smiles? Is it a high five? Is it a sense? No, it's very specific actions and a posture. But I believe that when that's the driving force, it actually yields better outcomes for the businesses financially. It yields better outcomes for the businesses operationally, strategically, in all the sort of key areas that businesses want to function and flourish. And it's better for the people, like, because businesses, sometimes it's a catch-all phrase. It's made of people, typically for people. Even in this age of automation and AI, et cetera, human beings are behind that. And human beings more often are the beneficiary of that. And so when that love for people, whether your people are employees, or the bucket of customers, or the bucket of people in the community that you operate in, or your suppliers, they're all human beings, they're all people. If that's the driving force, it's better for your business in all those ways. It's better for those people, and it's better for you, the people in the business, the leaders in the business. And so that's the ideology. And so my goal is to shed light on that, is to explain it. Over time is to impart that, and show results to say, here's what it looks like in practice. And here's how you can benefit from it as a business leader.
That's awesome. And we have very similar goals. We're trying to accomplish the same thing with that. That's the whole reason that I started this podcast, which is why I naturally had to have you on here, because the more of us doing this out here, the better. I'm the same as you. I love the business world. I did not go to business school. I went to design school. But I, just coming up, I fell in love with the business side of things. And, I love to mesh the two. And I just inherently think that when you have your focus on creating better outcomes for people, you are going to get rewarded for doing that. That's really where the reward comes from. It's the most sustainable way to have that reward. It is the way to secure more of that reward than other people. If you're looking at it from a competition standpoint, if you're out serving the competition, people are going to come to you. So I think that what you're talking about is fantastic, because that's a mentality. You're right. It is an ideology that if you are focused on creating great outcomes for people, that is going to influence how you do everything in your business, everything. And it can be hard when I talk to founders and executives about this stuff, that it's like complete mental shift for them to think about it this way, that they don't think that everything in the business can be touched by this mentality of pointing your operations, your product development, all of this stuff, all of it being completely wrapped around the customer, all of it orbiting around the customer. Down to the I like to joke, down to the cover sheets on the TPS reports. Whether or not you ask somebody to put a cover sheet on the TPS report, you're thinking, how does this impact the customer? Being able to ask that question, it's been a mental shift. What have you found in you talking about this, and you being a customer experience professional? Because if I'm not mistaken, you're the head of customer experience at Dominion Energy, right?
I am.
And how have you, what has been your experience of talking to leaders and trying to get them to understand this mindset?
One of the most interesting things, ever since I started writing about this, and this is early, right? I think I've only written 3 articles at this point. But between writing about it, sharing about it, talking to people about it, and naming it, right? Not, because I've had many roles in the customer space, and right now I'm in the customer experience at Dominion. But naming this has been one of the most really gratifying things I've ever done, because the nature of the conversation has changed. So it's one thing for me to have a conversation with you about CX in the most broad terms, right? And it's like, okay, yes, everyone's like, yes, customer experience, we want to do right by the customer. In essence, in theory, and we can talk about frameworks, and we can talk about, and all those things are very important. Don't get me wrong. I live by those things. Like, you need frameworks, you need a plan, you need a strategic plan, you need your allocation of resources all day. The shift that has come from this topic of love as a KPI, it just brings the conversation to a different depth. Both a different depth and a different altitude. It is. I was in a conversation with a leader, a local leader here in Richmond yesterday, and it came from, I really hadn't had no basic relationship with him, but it came from him reading the article and him reaching out. So I had a conversation with him, and it wasn't a CX conversation in the typical sense. He's a founder, he's an owner of a business, and we actually have a company that actually work with his company as well. But it was a conversation about him as a leader, primarily the essence of what he wants to leave as a legacy through his business, what he wants to leave as a legacy through his business to his employees and ultimately to his customers. And so I've noticed that, and again, this is 2 months in of me sharing about this, right? In the short time, it's changed the texture of conversation about the topic of the customer. It's helped us even more so, right? And it's so funny. I mean, when you say outserve the competition, it's the exact same thing. It's the same essence, but it brings the humanity up to the forefront. not as the customer as a means to an end, or as the resources that you need to find out, how do I get them to do something, or how do I get them to buy something? Is how do I make sure, quote unquote, how do I serve them? How do I make sure that what we're doing is to their benefit, knowing that the reward is there? You don't even have to manipulate it. You don't have to force it. Humans are wired to respond to being loved. That's the hack. That's the secret. It's not a secret, but that's basically the basis of this thought and this concept. So I will say I've been in many, many, many CX conversations over the course of my career, and will continue to be, right? But the love as a KPI conversations have been at a very different clip, and that has been gratifying and even revelatory to me myself.
That is awesome. I think that the way that you are framing that, and the ability that it has to cut through all of the typical buzzwords and all of that you're able to get that mental shift from people, because you're talking about it in a way that gets at the heart of what your posture towards the customer has to be. I think it's fantastic. I think it's hard. It does cut to the quick of it. Have you found that it's difficult for any leaders you've been talking to in the industry to shift from, everybody says they want to, like you said, everybody wants to serve the customer, everybody wants to do right by the customer, everybody's going to say that. But when you talk about measuring outcomes and how you determine whether your business is doing well, what's been the reaction to that as a whole? Like, is it mixed? Is everybody like, yeah, you're right? Or is it kind of like, I don't know, that sounds a little woo woo for me.
I love that question. And I'm going to ask, this is how you get yourself back on podcast. I'm going to say, bring me back in about 6-8 months after I've done a lot more, because my sense is there are people who will naturally gravitate to this message and it's all personality types, right? But because, it speaks to something in them that they may not even be able to articulate themselves. I genuinely believe that we were wired and designed to respond positively to these things. And so you'll find there are people I didn't expect to have a reaction to the articles reaching out. There are people I did expect that, like, yeah, this seems like them. And there are people who I didn't, and I just know that there's things in people, but I also know that there are people who saw it and just were like, whatever, clicked over it. And that's okay too. And my goal over the next few months is to start to engage with people more intentionally, to say, does this speak of all types of leader? Because I think love is not a feeling. It's not hugs. It's not about a high five. It's not it's not balloons in the sky. This is not about anything, quote unquote, emotional, right? Emotions come with the action, right? But emotions are, again, I've written about this piece, they're not reliable. And so my goal is to speak to, first and foremost, the people who this naturally speaks to. That's my primary goal. And so if you're someone who this resonates with you, you're not crazy. Yes, this is true. And then secondarily is to see for who are the people, what are the markers of people for who are skeptical. My goal is not to try to convince, but it's to try to understand what's the gap between what they're hearing and what they believe, and which will help the work itself. So I'll say more to come. The people I've spoken to are, again, more people who more naturally would say, yes, this is great. This is awesome. I know for sure. And there's something about me. Maybe I worked before the energy industry. I worked in insurance. And so I always joke that I'm drawn to the industries and the worlds and the environments that are the toughest, particularly when it comes to CX. And so maybe there's something about me that's good for these sorts of things. But I do look forward to engaging with people who say this is fluffy, but first and foremost, I know that there are people who already would resonate with this, and that's my primary focus.
That's good. I think that your engagement with them is going to be an example to other people. It's going to be an influence for the folks who, are maybe sitting back and watching and saying like, all right, is there anything to this? I think that it naturally resonates. I agree with you that people are naturally wired to respond to being loved, to being cared for. And I think that, people get that This is a thing. This is I can tell that if we do this, it is going to yield results. I think the question for a lot of business leaders is going to be, my organization, my culture is a certain way. Can I shift the culture? How long is it going to take? Do the people that I have in my business, are they going to be able to make this mental shift? And that's one of the things, just engaging in this work and, and what I do, with my business as well is trying to get people to see that everything that you want, is on the other side of this. And I think that is that's kind of my angle, is all the things that you want, all the KPIs that you want, that you're looking for, the revenue, profit margins, market share, everything that your investors care about is on the other side of you essentially loving your customer. You're exactly right that it's not a feeling, it's an action. And it's hard work, to decide to love them through the actions of your business, to take care of them is hard work.
That's right.
It's hard to fake that too. When you talk about the the actions that people need to take essentially to love their customers, again, reiterating, we're not talking about emotion primarily here. We're talking about action. When you talk about that, what do you think the first thing is that a business leader to have love as a KPI? What do they need to ask themselves? What are the questions they should be asking themselves to see if they are on the right track or not?
And I just have to, even as you were just speaking, Devin, I just have to applaud the approach you're taking to your work and your clients, because they will be better off for it as people, and their businesses will be better off for it. I think that the real thing, and it's in the question you just asked me, is this will always start with the leader, right? And so the pitch will always be, you'll get customers to stay longer, you'll get them to buy more, you get them to tell others, which is true. You'll get your employees to stay longer, they'll be advocates. Those are the outcomes you want. What I'm learning, even as I take step after step in bridging and bringing this idea to life more and more, is it actually does start with the leader themselves, because you can't give what you don't have. And so that's a longer conversation. But a leader first has to ask themselves truly and honestly, how do I see my customers? How do I see my employees? Truly, like genuinely, objectively. And they may be the answer to that question may change multiple times a day, right? You may start the day seeing your team as, we're all in together. There may be points in the day where you see your team as tools to get to an end. But just like net, wouldn't I think about the team, the organization that I lead, the human beings in this organization, on my peer? How do I see my peers? How do I see my bosses? I think that honest answer is step one. Do I see them as worthy of respect? Do I see them as worthy of service? Like, do I see myself as a servant to them? Do I see them as tools to get to an end? Whatever that answer is, it's just that important, honest question to start, like, because that's a starting point. One of the things that came to me very clearly a couple of years ago, even as this idea was, taking on its own life, is the same tools, the exact same things that we use in our day-to-day relationships with the people that we care about. The same things. We want to be listened to. We want, trust, like all of those elements that you and your best friend, Devin, or you and your wife might have. Those same things that are necessary to build a relationship are the exact same things you need for your customer. They're just applied in a different way. They just look different. And so they're the same because they're all human beings, right? But we see certain people, I understand that's a natural thing, as, of course, it's my best friend. Of course, I see them as a whole human being. But I may not see, and it's harder and harder the larger the organization is or the larger the customer base is. But how we first see people is the first step in my mind. Because we can never, the things that we do need to do, those actions aligned with love, they're hard to fake, just like you said. And you won't do them sustainably if you're just seeing people as one-dimensional objects or human resources for your gain alone? So that's the first question.
I think that's fantastic. You're absolutely right, in my opinion, that you have to be able to look squarely at, how do you see these folks? And you're essentially you're essentially determining by that, why are you here? Why are you doing this? Because how you see these people is inherently going to come with it. What problem are you trying to solve for them? Are you actually trying to solve a problem for them? And I love that you're saying that. Honestly, I think that I'm a little bit like, hey, you need to be out here on stages talking about this. If you can do it at one company, great. But they definitely need to be putting you on stages around the world talking about this, because that's the question that's at the heart, in my opinion, of every great company. And every great leader is able to answer that question in a way that has other people as the focus, not themselves.
That's very kind of you, Devin.
And I think
love
that you
said
nailed
great
it.
leader. The data, the evidence of everything that you're saying is everywhere. We just have to open our eyes to see it, right? If you read the book Good to Great, and they talk there about a level 5 leader, this is essentially what a level 5 leader is. Good to Great, Jim Collins did a lot of research to see what are those companies that outstand competition no matter what, and they tied it to the leadership. And a level 5 leader, anyone listening, to go Google that and see if it's not the same thing we're talking about here. And so you're spot on, Devin. In essence, the research points to it. We know it inside of ourselves as well. But even if that's not enough, look at the data, the kind of leader. And so I'm finding that this is about who is making people the kind of leader, and this is where you and the work you're doing with the clients, because I think you should be working with clients across the world, across the spectrum, because how do you make them the kind of leader that naturally get these results, that naturally get retention, that naturally get loyalty? Because you're cluing into the thing that humans, again, will always positively respond to, even if it takes time for some types of people to respond to it. If you outserve, you will win. Period. And so I'm listening to myself, and I'm also listening to you, and I'm like, this is essentially what you're doing in the world, and I really applaud you for that, Devin. Truly do.
Well, very, very kind of you. It is the sort of thing that I actually think also kind of cuts both ways, because you engage in having this mission of trying to help people see having love as a KPI is the thing that leads to all the other KPIs that you have. You wind up having to ask yourself, because everybody's going to ask you, right? How are you doing that? How are you doing that in your business? How have you found this challenging you
well,
in how you approach your work?
I will be honest. Anyone who knows me knows that I don't like, I don't play in the surface a lot. I jump right in. And so the honest truth is this has challenged me more than I anticipated. And I realized taking something and calling it, that's called love as a KPI, taking an ideology, a mindset that has actions tied to it and results tied to it, but it's about love. Love is, there's a line from a U2 song that I love quoting. Maybe it's U2 or maybe they're quoting someone else, but it says, love is a higher law. Love is a higher law. It is not a thing to be meddled with. You can't fake it. You can't talk about it without it changing you, without it challenging you. The more I've studied on this topic, the more I'm written on this topic, ideas come to me, the more I talk to people. It's first and foremost about who I'm becoming, who I need to become. I cannot, in good conscience, talk about a message that I'm not letting challenge me first. And that, I think, has been one of the most humbling things. I'm on a really humbling journey, is the truth. The more I find that I need to talk about this and share about this, the more, honestly, to my knees I am, just humble, because it is, you can't write about something. So the other day I wrote about how do you see people. I'm constantly then challenged by what drove my action. How did I see this person? And so the transformation is happening within me, myself, in ways that I did not anticipate. but it will not be an enduring message. It will not land. It will not last if the carrier themselves are not opening themselves up to being transformed by the idea of love. Love is not a feeling. It is a power. I don't know what to call it. It's a very, very powerful force. And so I'm answering you very honestly, very transparently. It is stretching me in behind the scenes. It is stretching me more than I anticipated. But I've committed to it. Yeah.
That's great. That's fantastic. I would expect nothing less. And it's been doing the same thing to me, having, basically kind of, being the bearer of this message and trying to create a framework of how to carry out what I'm talking about. Applying that to myself reveals all of my weak points, right? It reveals everywhere where I'm not living up to the ideal. And that also though lets me know that I'm on to something, because the more that it is challenging me, the more I realize why it is so hard for businesses to do this. It's so hard to truly be customer centered, because it forces you to constantly give of yourself, to give your best, especially when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, because it's when you don't feel like doing it,
right,
that there's the most risk of mistreating somebody, of phoning it in, and they remember those things. We know that we remember when we engage with a company, when we engage with a person, and we can tell they phoned it in, and the level of, honestly, like the level of really aloneness, the loneliness that you feel. I know that sounds a little bit woo woo there, but anybody can probably imagine when you're engaging with somebody who clearly does not have your best interest in mind, and you're giving them your money, and trusting them to get a certain outcome from you or for you, and they clearly don't, whether they're having a bad day, we all have bad days, whatever it is, but in that moment, their number one priority is not taking care of you, it's something else, and you can feel that, and that makes you feel alone. And I think that that's one of the things that causes somebody, all those little interactions are things that make somebody split off from, it fractures the relationship with the brand. And it's a tough thing to have your entire company move in the direction of this. It's not an easy thing.
Alone. These are things that are happening day in, day out on account of businesses. And when a survey may not reveal it, right? You can do an exit survey, like, why did you leave our business? And even the person may not even be able to articulate it, but that was the deposit that, like, it didn't seem like they cared, but and so I think it's important that we understand the humanity dynamics that impact businesses, that impact the results that we want, in tandem with everything else, because you're absolutely right. We know that when someone's not giving us our best, they're not focusing on it, just like you said, there's a message being communicated. And sometimes we may not even know how to articulate it, but we know what we felt. We know what that sting is. And as humans, we are wired also to want to protect ourselves. And so you're not likely to choose that company or that interaction again. You don't want to experience that. And so now the outcome is, someone said, well, we've seen a drop in revenue. That's the slide version. What also happened was someone felt disconnected from the brand because they were not made to feel loved and appreciated. And so they left. It's important to hold both the metrics, the revenue drop story, but also what's the human story behind it.
Right. Absolutely. Having you're right that the survey may not tell you why. The survey may not tell you why. People oftentimes don't know how to articulate that. It's one of the reasons why I advocate for, if you're doing the survey, don't just do the survey, do the qualitative work, talk to that person, pick up on the intonations in how they're talking about it, the posture, the body language, the emotions that they're expressing, so that you can understand what they're really feeling behind that, and how the impact that these interactions have had, what might really be behind them leaving. The interesting thing is, people don't like to give bad news on most of the time, and so it's hard to get people to be honest with you if they chose to make another decision, and it wasn't just they absolutely cannot stand your business and they are so mad that they're going to let it all out. A lot of times they just want to move on, and they don't want to spend the time talking to you about why they're moving on. And so it's important to be able to get those interactions. People also have survey fatigue. So, I'm a big proponent of people.
That's right.
Ask the minimum amount of questions that you need to ask to know whether or not it's worth a further conversation. I would love to know, because the energy space is so different from, the rest of the commerce world. It's not the sort of thing where you can just go and pick between 5 different energy companies, right? You generally have one to choose from in your geographic region, and there's a lot of regulation. How are you applying your principles and love as a KPI to your work in the energy space
before
at
I
Dominion?
joined the energy industry? So I'm in the energy utility industry. And I never thought that I would be in an industry like this. It just never came to mind. And one of the many things that made me very keen, like I genuinely feel I am in my element in this industry, in this role. I'm very grateful to be here. One of the things that switches that flip for me is understanding you're providing an essential service, genuinely, right? We would not be literally having this conversation if not for the energy that's running through our homes and our devices, et cetera. That's one. The dynamics are very interesting. It's highly regulated, as you've said. We serve all, right? We have to serve all our customers, and our customers cut across every type of demographic, work of life. It's not like, some brands are for X sort of people and some are for Y sort of people. And then within an industry, you'll see sort of the brands here for this type of, we don't have that sort of stratification. It's all, which for me, right, on one hand, one can say, well, it shouldn't matter. You're captive, you have a captive audience, you know, you are the only game in town. If you build it, they will come. I think the opposite, and I think many in the company as well do, where one, we understand it's a privilege to serve our customers. Two, our customers are so diverse that we have to think about the different and unique needs, of the customers, right? You have diversity in location. Some are in rural areas, some are in city and urban areas. You have diversity in language, diversity in perspective, diversity in channels that they prefer, diversity in this. And so I think that loving in this case is obviously number one thing is through the work that colleagues that provide reliable service do. That's the thing. Everything falls to the ground if we don't have the power. So you can have the best digitally designed app, but if there's no power, it doesn't matter. That's like first and foremost is reliability of service. I think beyond that, this concept of love as a KPI for me comes in how do we get better at speaking the language of each individual customer, or in how do we fine tune our messaging for each customer type, each customer archetype? How do we make it simpler, right? I made the joke that I'm drawn to sort of industries where there's a lot of complexity myself, because I have a burden to make things simple and accessible. How do we write communications in a way that's easy to understand and people don't feel like they're not intelligent because they don't understand it, right? How do we create self-service channels that meet people at different points of their need? Not everyone has the luxury of being able to call during work hours. And so for me, it's appreciation of the fact that we have to serve all. And because we have to serve all, we have to serve all equitably. And we have to meet each person at that point. Love for me is seeing people It includes sort of seeing people, right? So empathy is one of the 5 things that I've defined that describe love. And empathy is not just like, oh, I feel what you're feeling. No, that's sympathy. Empathy is I'm able to put myself, I can identify with you. I can put myself where you are. And so I think developing a greater appreciation for where our range of customers are in with various indices, I think is one key part of it. And of course, how we communicate, how we provide services, all of those things align with that. So that's how I see love as a KPI, or love in essence in this industry, particularly because there is no proverbial choice in the way it might be for a candy store.
That is fantastic. The way that you talk about that, because you could come into this and say, well, okay, like, people can't really choose. There's no real incentive for them to be great at this, and we're going to phone it in, right? And the fact that that Dominion has a head of customer experience, first of all, is great. Second of all, to have somebody like you doing that, every utility company needs a Utibe Bassey there doing what you're doing, because that is exactly in this instance. I mean, such an essential part of somebody's life being able to go on is having power, having heat, et cetera, in their home. How much more should we be focusing on trying to, love that customer, do what we can for that customer, even if we
Honestly,
have no other
it's funny
competition.
because I say things and you play it back, and I'm like, wow,
to
that's
do
that's
right by
brilliant. That's
them.
awesome. You're right.
I
I hit
think
that.
that's
You know, the
awesome.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs at the very bottom rung is that safety, and that's I would actually put the things that electricity provides are. Gas provides, right? Heat, ability to warm your home, ability to cook your food. That's that bottom. It's like essential to life. So before they can even start to go up that hierarchy of needs, they need the thing. And so our posture has to be, and I believe when I joined the company, because I believe that's the posture of the company, that's the posture of the leadership. It is an honor to be able to provide you with this thing that then empowers you to go on and do all the other things and achieve all these other things. And we can never, the moment we take, or any company takes this for granted, like, yeah, we are the smart company. If you build it, we have no choice. It will that posture will show up some way somehow. It'll show up through the employees. It'll show up through the communications. It'll show up. It will show up. And so the reason I always start with how do you see, because how you see, how you perceive a thing shows up in how you act towards it. And when we read about companies that have issues with employees and all of these things, I'm not going to claim it, it's usually linked to how a leader even just sees that employee base themselves. It's always starts with perception. Anyways, thanks, Devin.
Oh, you're spot on, and it really does start at the top. It starts with the leader, and I think that you nail it, and that person, how that person sees other people, is going to drive everything. I mean, all of it's going to flow from the leadership, and that's awesome that at Dominion you have leadership that thinks of it as an honor
It's a privilege
to serve
really
those
is.
customers, and they don't look at it as, hey, we're the only game in town. What else are you going to do, right? Because that's awesome. I think the other thing that I would love to ask you is, what advice would you give to business leaders out there who want to begin shifting their organization? They realize that their organization isn't prioritizing
Great question.
outcomes
I
for
think
customers, love as a
couple
KPI.
things.
What's your advice
I
to
am
them
someone
on
who
how
loves
to
to
get
start with
started
the
down the
end in
path?
mind. Um, even as a young person, a younger person, I'm still young. As a younger person, I would start, sometimes I'll read a book, I'll go to the end, or go to the magazine, I'll go to the end and come back. But I do like starting with the end in mind. To get started, I would say 3 things. One is articulate as much as you can, what is the end goal? What do you want out of this? When you think about your own legacy as a leader, what do you want to be said at the end? When you think about the legacy of the company, what kind of impact do you want people to say the company had on people, both the employees and the customers and others? Like, what's the story you want to tell at the end? This is going to sound morbid. I've written my eulogy twice. I did it once when I was applying to grad school, and I did it again in a workshop. And I actually updated it. So I do look at it, and I'll update it, at least once a year, just to see, is it tracking? And even if it's not a eulogy, it's write a date in the future after all is said and done. What has happened by then? And then look at your life today and see. So I think the getting started piece, like first and foremost, is like, what is the outcome you want? Because for anyone who may be listening and thinks, I want, my company's not there, but I want to get clear on what's the outcome you want. Be specific as well. Don't make it broad and say we've helped people. By what? Do you help them do what? You help them become what? You help them, and talk about how you do it through. So there's a little framework I have, how you do it through your leadership, meaning what's the impact of your leadership, how you do it through your offerings, so your products and services, how are you enabling people through those, how you do it through value, what do you value, what do you measure, like what would you like to measure, and then how you do it through engagement, right? That's your LOVE. How do you serve people through your ongoing engagement, how you communicate with them? So I would say start with the end in mind and define that. And then number two is that you come to today and see how far away are you from there? What do you have? There's always something that you're already doing that is tied to that. I don't think many people will be like, what? We want to do this, but there's something that you're already doing, you already believe. What do you have today? What are the assets today that you have to build on? And then the third is sort of start to chart the path, right? If I would say that get help. I think Devin Smith is one person that I would recommend that you reach out to, honestly. But if you're just listening and you're thinking, okay, what does this even mean for me? How do I shift my company? I know that there's more that we are here to do. I know there's a better, I've heard reviews from my employees. I've heard reviews from my customers. It's not great. I want to shift this. I want to turn this organization around. Get clear on the end. Take every barrier that you have to, it's not possible because, no, just write the end story. That's why I do it to the end of my life. Like, I'm not looking at today. Then come to today, see what am I doing well, what am I not doing well? And then you need help getting from A to C. So that's your C. Today is your A. The B part is what you need help with. And I would recommend doing it with an advisor. This is where I would say people like Devin are the people I would reach out to have that conversation.
Wow. The check's in the mail. Appreciate the endorsement.
It's true.
Utibe, that is remarkable. That is remarkable. First of all, the fact that you have written your own eulogy and have updated it, you are basically saying, what do I want to have accomplished by the end of my life? That is so remarkable. It really is incredible. I mean, you got me over here thinking about, man, I need to do this. I mean, this is awesome. I think being able to say that, obviously, I quote Steve Jobs all the time. His famous quote, start with the customer experience and work backwards. He said work backwards to the technology. I always modify and say start with the customer experience and work backwards to everything else. But to look at, I mean, for a leader especially, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to say that you've left behind, that you've done? That is incredible. I love that. What led you to do that? How did you even come to think that way? I need to write my own eulogy so I make sure that I do the right thing with the time I have here on this earth.
Many years back, I was going through what I affectionately love to call a quarter life crisis. I was in a job that I loved the people. One of the best team experiences that I had at the time. And I was finding that the job itself was deeply unsatisfying. It wasn't helping anyone. I couldn't see the connection between what I did every day and people. And I didn't have the language for it. I didn't say, this is the beginning of love, it's a KPI, or I just knew that there was something missing. And so one of the many things I did in that time period was this exercise of like, what should this life yield? At the end of the day, what's the story this life needs to tell? What's the impact I want to have? And so I wrote it then. And then many years after that, I was in a workshop and they actually had us do it there as well. I'm not sure if he made it a eulogy. He may have done a retirement party, but I know that I had the eulogy already. And so I just use that as an opportunity to update it. And then my mentor, sort of my main mentor, she has annual leadership classes. So really, really strategic, important, big leadership classes. And she actually has us do it there as well. So if you've never done it, you do it there. But if you have done it, you update yours. And I updated mine each year. It's a very powerful tool. And I'm not sure if it heard me say this. I think when you start with the end in mind, you find that what most people want is a life that has impacted others. Most what business leaders want is a life that has impacted others. It's very clear and simple when we think about the story. One of my best friends, or one of my closer friends back in the day, she bought me, it's still on my coffee table. It's if you came to my house, you would see it and you'd be scared. It's literally called the Book of the Dead. It's a New York Times book that just has obituaries of famous people. And I don't know what led her to buy it, or what she did it before I did the eulogy thing. Maybe she knew I did the eulogy thing. But I love it because you have these really famous people. At best, their lives are 2 pages, but most people have a half a page of an obituary. And it says essentially the essential things, and it's usually their impact on people. It's usually it doesn't become the, it's what do they do for people. And so it's to start saying all that to say, for leaders, to start with the end, not just for yourself, but for your business. Assess where you are and get help bridging that.
Wow. I'm blown away. So clearly I need to go do this. I need to go write my eulogy. Everybody listening, I think you should do the same thing. For your business, obviously, being able to write, I've heard some people talk about, I want to say Amazon famously does the press release. And they're like, start with the press release. What does the press release say, et cetera? I like the idea though of somebody else writing about what you've done. If you want to put this in the context of your company, write an article that somebody wrote about what you've accomplished, and work backwards to that. I think that's great. I think that this essentially starting with purpose. It's starting with purpose, and it's the first of my 5 forces of customer experience. Purpose is the first thing for a reason. It's the same thing here. It's the exact same principle. Having that, it dictates everything else. And for you to do that in such a powerful way, this isn't just business advice, folks. This is life advice. We're getting some massive nuggets of wisdom here from Utibe. This has been fantastic. I definitely will have to have you back on the show so that we can see in 6 to 8 months, the impact that this is having. I absolutely know that it will, and I will try to my best to spread the impact of your work. I love what you're doing. Keep going. It caught my eye. The first piece you put out, I was like, whoa, where'd this come from? That she gets it. We gotta amplify this. So I love what you're doing, and thankful that you're doing it.
I'm very, very grateful. I'm not just saying it. I'm very honored. I'm very humbled. I think I appreciate you giving me a space on your platform. You didn't have to. I do appreciate it. And I applaud not just the work you're doing, but who you have become for the work that you're doing. And I am excited for every client that will work with you and partner with you, because it's not just their business that will flourish. It's things connected to them that they didn't realize that could flourish as well.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. I hope I can make you proud. God willing, I will make you proud.
You got it, Devin.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Utibe, for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
Wow. Folks, what a great conversation with Utibe. I hope you enjoyed listening to that as much as I enjoyed talking to her. We had some great points that we covered, but what I wanted to make sure that you got, in case you didn't catch all of it, is that she actually has love as an acronym, and each of those things means something. So for our wrap up here, I want to make sure that you got all of those. So it starts with L, leadership. How do we lead? She goes to talking about offering for O, your products, your services, the experiences that you're offering both to employees and customers. And that should be very familiar to folks on the show. You know that I think that both sides of that, employee and customer experience, are important. V, talking about value, the value proposition and the degree to which we meet the customer's needs and deliver value to them. And then finally, E, and for engagement, the ongoing relationship that the business has with people and the mediums through which that relationship is nurtured. Obviously, that happens on a lot of different channels. How are you engaging, and on what channels are you engaging with your customer? So that's it. LOVE, love as a KPI. Utibe, again, we thank you for being on the show. Hope to have you back. If you want to be able to connect with Utibe, you can find her on Instagram at Love as a KPI. You can check her out on the web at loveasakpi.com and find her on LinkedIn, Utibe Bassey, Utibe Bassey. Folks, thanks so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe. And until next time, keep outserving your competition on your relentless pursuit to become an experienced leader. Catch you in the next one.